Hello everyone, time for your week 8 overview for Humanities 103. And as you can see by that picture right there, we are still working on flood myths. The first two readings this week are scholarly papers that have to do with similarities among many of the flood myths around the world. The very first one is interesting because it looks at the oral tales or myths of ancient cultures as a way of determining how they adapted to floods. And the takeaway then is, is there any useful information that we can gather about how we might respond to increased flooding or rising sea levels by looking at that mythology regarding floods from the past? The second one, structural parallels in two flood myths, look at the similarities between the Genesis account of the flood, or Noah's Ark, and a Maori flood myth. Now, the Maori are the indigenous people from New Zealand. The next are two sources that look at the Epic of Gilgamesh. Now, the reason we want to look at this particular reading is because of the absolute eerie similarities between the flood story in the Epic of Gilgamesh and what we typically think of as the Noah's Ark story. The only thing is, the Epic of Gilgamesh was written approximately 1,000 years before the Genesis version of the flood. So there's all kinds of interesting ideas and theories around that. And really, if you go back to some of our very first readings at the beginning of the semester, where we talked about the problem of similarities, there's good information on there about why that might be so. So the first one there, the Epic of Gilgamesh, is a video that gives you a good overview of the entire piece of, well, we'll call it writing. It was put on cuneiform tablets. And then the second one is actually looking at the text of the Epic of Gilgamesh. So what I've done is I have a link there to what's called Tablet 11, or it'd be like Chapter 11 of the Epic of Gilgamesh, the story of the flood. And so as you read that, I want you to be thinking about things you see in there that sound like they're very similar or even identical to the Genesis version of the flood. Now, even if it wasn't a story that you heard as a child, or I think most of us have some passing, knowledge of what that story entails. And if you really don't know, well, then reading that earlier paper about the similarities between the Genesis version of the flood and the Maori version, well, that will give you all the background you need in order to really make a good comparison between these two particular stories. So that's sort of our theme this week, is what are these similar elements in some of these very, very well-known flood stories? Your main task this week is to complete the midterm quiz. The midterm quiz consists of 16 short answer or fill-in-the-blank true, false, or multiple choice questions that all have to do with the information that you either read about or watched during the first 8 weeks of this semester. Those questions are worth 40 possible points, and you have full access to all of the material from those readings and videos while you are taking the quiz. So you can start the quiz, you can click away to the information in the modules to get the answer that you need, and you can click back to the quiz, and it won't close it on you. You can use all of those readings and videos, but please do not access any sources outside of our course materials, because we've talked about this before. There are so many different versions and ideas and theories. If you jump on Wikipedia or something to try and find the answer, chances are very good you're not going to get the correct information. So please, this is just confined to what we've talked about on our own Canvas course site. You have 3 hours to complete the quiz. So once you start it, the clock starts. That's plenty of time. That's actually way more time than it takes to complete 16 questions. So I've never ever had anybody run out of time or not be able to complete it. However, if you close the quiz, it does not let you open it up again. So make sure that you have a time when you're going to not be interrupted, when your internet's working really well, and that you can easily finish this in the allotted time. The quiz opens on Wednesday, March 1st. There is a link in your week 8 module. You can just click on that. It will open up the quiz, and you have until Sunday, the end of the day on Sunday. Don't start it, really close to the end of that time, because you want to make sure that you give yourself plenty of time to complete that. So there you go. So that's, as I said, your main task for this week. There are no other discussions or anything like that. All right. Well, I hope that answers all of your questions, and I will talk to you again next week.